Howdy, another Quality Minute episode. We are talking about our NCRs, our corrective action reports, preventative action reports, CAPAs. There's just so many dadgum reports out there. But what does the standard actually say we need? It's a good question. So let's just go look at it. If we're going to see what the standard says we need, so please, any of you here watching this, please tell me the clause to go to that tells us we need an NCR. Nothing? Yeah, probably not. Tell me the clause we need to go to for a corrective action report. Yeah, kind of, maybe not really there. Hey, we see the word corrective action, and it's with the word nonconformity, but that's in the improvement section. That's not really in like our daily production process. So it's actually a bit confusing. The standard does not use these common terms that we use every day when we're managing our system. So what are we supposed to do? Well, fact is, we actually kind of get to decide what we do. And so I'm going to give you my opinion of what you ought to do. Now, we do run into some little quirks here if you're dealing with API in addition to ISO 9001. See, ISO 9001 has its own set of language. The API Q1, Q2 have their own, and they require a specific term called a preventative action. So what I'm going to argue is that a preventative action and a corrective action are one in the same. Just depends on if we have a known or a potential nonconformity that we need to correct. If you go back and look at one of the last videos we did talking about risk, well, then you know that risk-based thinking integrates the same way with a known or a potential defect. So that's good information for us to have and know. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive in clause 8.7, but let's see what section that's under here. So 8.7 is under our operations clause. So this is just our standard production processes. So let's jump over there to clause 8.7. I'll zoom in so we can see this a little bit better. So control of non-conforming outputs. All right, non-conforming output, that's a pretty good term. We don't really need to diagnose and detail that term much better. So it says the organization shall deal with, and I love that term. I tell my kids deal with it. So ISO tells us deal with it. The organization shall deal with non-conforming outputs in one or more of the following ways. A lot of times we call these, either our acceptance criteria or disposition code, something along those lines. So was this a correction? Okay, we fixed it. It broke, I fixed it. I tell people all the time that's what an NCR is. And the NCR is the I broke, I fixed it form. So it's a correction. Maybe it's segregation, containment, return, or suspension of provision of products and services. Okay, so we had a problem. We segregated it. We have a quarantine area that we put it off in. Not, I guess the whole world was a giant nonconformity without good corrective action, I might add, with the whole COVID epidemic. So we're going to segregate everything. We're going to contain it. Maybe we return it back to the customer, or maybe we just outright suspend operations. So yeah, you've heard these stories about the production lines where someone can go push the red button and it stops the whole product line. That fits into this category. Maybe we want to inform the customer something went wrong, or maybe it just went different than we expected. Tell your customer that this happened. You'd much rather tell them they got a problem coming than have something blow up, 2 weeks later. Or maybe you just want to obtain authorization for acceptance under concession. So what really is going on here? So we want to get a concession to move forward. So it's out of criteria, but for this particular instance, I think we can accept it, and then you get the document and information to state as such. You got to make sure that you describe the nonconformity. What went wrong? What did you take to correct it? Any concessions if they were obtained. So this is generally just our standard nonconformance report process. I guess I'm a little bit too loud in here. So that's our standard nonconformance report process. It is the I broke, I fixed it report. Very, very straightforward. You're going to have a lot of these, and these nonconformance reports do a fantastic job of helping you identify and build trends. And trends are fantastic for the next one we're going to look at, which is here in the improvement section. So we see the term nonconformity and corrective action here, but do not be confused. This is not the clause of the standard that tells you the criteria for your nonconformance reports. So clause 10.2, when a nonconformity occurs, including arising from complaints, so customer complaints automatically sticks us over here. The organization shall react to the nonconformity as applicable. Okay, so that means that there is not a set way we have to respond. We get to make some decisions. We get to choose. We get to be smart about this. And you're going to deal with the consequences of what happens. We're going to evaluate the need for action to eliminate the cause of the nonconformity. So cause. Now we're getting into root cause. So nonconformance report, if you read in section 8.7, we don't care about the cause. We don't care about prevention. We had a problem and we dealt with it and we moved on. We want to determine here the cause of the nonconformity, determining if similar nonconformities exist or could potentially occur. So this puts us in that preventative action here a little bit, and also tells us trend analysis is a very, very good thing for us. We're going to want to implement any actions needed. Hey, you go back and look at everything about risk. Action, that's a key term, action. So actions addressed are part of our corrective action, preventative action process. You have to review the effectiveness. So with a nonconformance report, there's no talk of review of effectiveness in 8.7. We just fix it, we move on. We fix it, we move on. In document, of course. Here, we really want to make sure that the fix we put in place is actually effective. Otherwise, what's the point? We want to update risk and opportunities as determined during planning if necessary. So the standard by no means, absolute by no means, requires a risk register. We've talked about that recently. So if we are integrating risk into our corrective actions, my personal favorite way of doing it, we do this in our QMS software, but it's just a really fantastic tool, is what you do is you identify your risk pre-mitigation, you identify your risk post-mitigation. Now you've identified risk, you've updated your risks, and you have very good objective evidence to show that your fix was effective. So it goes a little bit further. The organization shall retain documented information, so you got to document it, about the nature of nonconformities and subsequent actions and the results of any corrective action. And all of this is here in our improvement clause. So what I argue is that you really only need two forms here. We need a nonconformance report. We need a corrective preventative action report. Depending on your industry, you may simply call it a corrective action report. You may call it a corrective action preventative action report. I would even argue that a corrective action preventative action report can be a very valuable tool in management of change, as opposed to having to have a separate MOC form. If you're in a smaller organization with a simpler management system, you really don't even need the additional management of change form, but we can discuss that a little bit later. My personal philosophy is and always has been with quality management to keep it simple. The simpler the solution, the more apt our team is to join in and utilize it. And if simply adding one additional code, one additional checkbox to our form can let it take the role of two other forms, then by all means do that. Let's keep it simple, keep it easy, and keep moving forward. So that is all I've got for our episode today. So if you have any comments, let me know. My contact information will be below.